so impressed. I mean, the amount of money.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Cass Clay Food Commission. Too used to saying Fargo. I'm Arlette Preston, Chair of the Commission, and actually we want to welcome a new member, Jim Capitan.
Thank you.
Jim and I go back a ways from when I was on the commission before, but let's take a few minutes and introduce ourselves. Jim, if you want to start and just give us a little bit of information
Okay,
on
well,
your background.
yep. My name is Jim Capitan, and I'm a Cass County Commissioner, former city employee for 42 years, but presently on the Cass County Commission and running for re-election.
Well, welcome. Glad
Thank
you could
you.
join us.
Thank you.
My name is Jeffrey Miller. I'm the director at the Cass County Soil Conservation District.
Paul Krabanoff, Clay County Commissioner.
Dave Steichen, Dilworth City Council Member and Clay County Planning Commissioner.
Arlette Preston, Fargo City Commission.
Joan Copperrood, at large.
Heather Niesemeyer, City of Moorhead City Council member.
And I'm Anna Johnson. I'm an at-large member.
And I think we have two
Jeff
people
York.
online.
Yep.
Jeff, go
Jeff
ahead.
York, at-large member. Yeah, Jeff York, at-large member.
Karen or Karen? I'm sorry, I'm not certain exactly how to pronounce that. Are you online? Karen, okay. Nope, must not be. Okay. So in front of us, we have the agenda. First item is to approve the order and contents of the overall agenda. So if there's changes, a motion to do so.
Motion, Niesemeyer.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's also minutes in our packet. Motion to approve, if there's no changes, would be good.
Joan Copperrood, approve.
Second?
Motion to approve, yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. So one of the things that we also, I apologize, let me back up a little bit. There's also a new steering committee member. Eric, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Eric Hegg, and I recently joined the steering committee as a representative of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services.
And why don't we just go down the line in the table and steering committee members, if you'd introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Janice Tweet with the Great Plains Food Bank and co-chair of the steering committee.
Good morning. Michelle Draxton, Fargo Cast Public Health, and also the co-chair of the steering committee.
Good morning. My name is Hallie Heimbuck, and I'm a dietetic intern with Fargo Cast Public Health.
Adam Altenberg, Fargo Moorhead Metropolitan Council of Governments.
Rita Yasatis, NDSU Extension Service in Cass County.
Deb Haugen, Nutrition Consultant.
Erica Frank, Clay County Planning and Zoning.
Rory Beal, Clay County Public Health.
And Noelle Harden, University of Minnesota Extension.
And this group is truly the workhorse behind this commission, so thank you all for doing that. So one of the things that we thought would be good to do at every meeting probably, and actually I would suggest that we print this right on the agenda perhaps, is to review and listen, hear again the mission of this group. So I'm going to read it this morning, and then hopefully we'll have it on our agendas from here on out as well. The mission of the Cass Clay Food Partners is to improve all levels of the community food system and to assure that residents have increased access to safe, nutritious, affordable, and culturally based foods. The Cass Clay Food Partners includes three separate arms: Cass Clay Food Commission, which is us, which educates local leaders and discusses food policy issues; a steering committee comprised of key government institutions and local food system experts that advises the Food Commission, and an action network of area organizations and individuals working together on important food topics. The Action Network has been the first Fridays that have been going on for quite a while, and they have completed their work. They're done. So I think there's some reexamination of how that Action Network will work. But there are the three arms of our organization. So just good to review what we're here to do and the purpose. Any questions or comments? All right. So is there a video that will be shown or? I don't think your mic is on.
Is this one working?
Yep, that one's working.
We're just going to show a video that the Cass Clay Food Partners produced back in October of 2022, just highlighting Cass Clay Food Partners and its work here.
Okay, thank you.
The Cass Clay Food Partners initially came together about 12 years ago. It was started by local public health and extension from both sides of the Red River. Our food system is everything entailed in getting food from the ground to our dinner plates. So that includes looking at how food is grown, where food is being grown, if the right kind of food is being grown for our community, how is that food being distributed, where is it being sold, how is it being marketed, and then finally, do people know how to prepare foods that are healthy?
Access to healthy food is terrifically important, and that feeds into a healthy lifestyle, being healthy for the rest of your life. You can't have a healthy community if you've got a community that has people that aren't secure with food sources. City Hall, city employees exist to provide services to the community. It doesn't mean just streets and water and sewer and all of those things. It means helping the community to be as healthy as they can. When you look at the foundation of being healthy, safety and security is number one, and food is part of that.
Food is foundational to public health in a number of ways. Cooking with your family, gardening, being outside, having that stronger connection with where our food comes from, not only improves our dietary health, but it helps us feel more socially connected to one another in the community. I believe that the Cass Clay Food Partners and this kind of values-driven network where people come together to really work on the edges and look at who's most marginalized by our current food system and what is the responsibility that all of us have to change that. So really, the Cass Clay Food Partners, we are looking at that full gamut of practices, policies, of businesses, of having access to gardening spaces and everything in between.
That's actually a nice recap on the mission, to be honest with you. So good, thank you.
About 6 or 7 years ago, we had a group of all the residents in the city that were interested in keeping chickens.
All right.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So it is time actually to reappoint some, or to appoint some at-large members. And the individuals, Anna, Joan, and Jeffrey, are up for reappointment, and I believe all of you have agreed to be reappointed. So it would be Commission's accountability to do that. But before we do that, any of you want to say anything in support of your candidacy? No? All right. So a motion to reappoint all three, Anna Johnson, Joan Copperwood and Jeffrey Miller would be good.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Does that need a roll call vote? No? Okay, I'm sorry. We got yours, Jeff, too, so thank you. Or, I'm sorry, it's not Jeff. Yeah, it's Jeff.
Yeah.
All right. So, on to the next item. Adam is going to talk a little bit about the resources and review.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair. So this is a continuation of our resource review that we've been doing since the beginning of last year. Again, this is information that we shared previously, but since 2015, we've put together nearly 24 different types of resource documents, which follow two different formats. One are blueprints, which look at food systems from land development code perspectives across the region, and then issue briefs and snapshots, which provide an overview of an issue on a local topic area. So today we're going to look at two of the issue briefs and snapshots that we developed in 2019 and 2020. The one is for pollinator habitats, which we looked at in April of 2019, and then the second is pesticides on public land, which we looked at in January 2020. So what are pollinator habitats? Pollinator habitats are plantings which consist of native shrubs, grasses, and wildflowers which provide cover, nectar, and pollen for native pollinators. These are important, especially in our area, in our region, as they play a vital role in pollinating approximately 70 to 80% of all flowering plants in North Dakota and Minnesota, including a lot of the food that's grown and produced here in our area. And these pollinators, they include a wide range of different types of insects, including bees and butterflies, moths. They also include bats and birds. So one of the things that the snapshot highlighted for pollinator habitats is we looked at some of the local initiatives that have been done in our area. One is the Pollinator Garden at the Moorhead Country Club. This is a student learning project in collaboration between Horizon Middle School and Concordia College. Is basically a garden that I want to say they planted on the 7th hole there to attract hummingbirds and bees to the area. Another initiative is the Clay County Community Solar Gardens. It's a cohabitation efforts to incorporate pollinator habitats and solar gardens. And this is something that Erica Frank highlighted in her presentation last November on talking about some of the initiatives in Clay County. The next that was highlighted in the snapshot was the Plains Art Museum Buzz Lab. This is a paid internship for teens to discuss the importance of pollinators in our area. Another initiative that we highlighted, it's a little bit outside our area, but it's the Public Art St. Paul, Be Real, Be Everywhere. And what these are sculpture skyrises that act as homes for bees in the city. And then lastly is the Longspur Prairie Fund Annual Bee Hunt, which works to protect native plants, animals, habitats, and ecologies in our area. And with that snapshot, we also talked about some of the funding programs for pollinator habitats. A lot of these come from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they include the Conservation Technical Assistance, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and then local USDA resources. And there is an office here in Fargo that local jurisdictions and other community members can access. There's also the Land Conservation Assistant Networks that provides funding for different types of habitat restoration projects. And then lastly is the 2018 Agriculture Improvement Act, also known as the Farm Bill. This has actually been extended through September 2024. It would have expired here at the end of last month, but that's been extended, and that still includes programs for habitat restoration as well. So the next snapshot we're going to just highlight briefly is the pesticide use on public land. And the reason that this came into being is that back in 2017, there was a coalition of local food organizations that was searching to develop a community garden and incubator farm on public land in the area. And they were working with the city of Fargo, and what they found was some flood buyout land in the south of town that would have been perfect for this project. But right before they were going to have a public hearing, they were notified by the Cass County Weed Control that the land had been sprayed by a pesticide, which rendered it unusable for farming for between 3 to 5 years. So we thought that this would be a good thing to look at for our community. And what this snapshot does is it's basically a guide for citizens and public officials to understand which department in each jurisdiction makes decisions for different types of pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides in the area. And then also has information on local processes for controlling for pests on public land. And within the snapshot, and two of the groups I wanted to highlight, they've been really important partners to the Cass Clay Food Partners and the Cass Clay Food Commission. They've come and spoken to our group a number of times, and these include the Cass County Vector Control. And one of the things that the snapshot does is it highlights some of the things that Vector Control has been doing in recent years. And that's been changing the chemicals to chemicals that have lower toxicity when they do vector control in our area. They've also been spraying less. In the past, they were spraying between 15 and 16 times a year. In past seasons, it's been closer to 3 to 4 times a year. They also developed a pollinator protection plan, which provides buffer areas for commercial beekeeping zones in Cass County. They've also been good in educating the public on how to reduce mosquito populations, include getting rid of standing water on your property and then keeping your grass mowed at lower levels. And then also what Vector Control has been doing recently too is that residents can receive notifications on spraying schedules through either Facebook or other social media. But in addition to Vector Control, Cass County Weed Control has also been a really good partner for us. And one of the things that the snapshot highlights is that they have procedures to include not spraying on standing water in ditches, and then they've been moving to spraying selectively only when noxious weeds are present. And then with that case study that we looked at the beginning, they've been flagging flood buyout land that has been sprayed and then notifying the public about that so that the public is aware. And then the last thing I'll note with that snapshot is that there's a number of nonprofits that are involved in these efforts as well. And these include Audubon, Dakota, Longspur Prairie Fund, Pheasants Forever, and River Keepers. All have a duty to conserve and restore natural ecosystems in our area. So that's all I really have to highlight those issue briefs and snapshots for pollinator habitats and pesticides on public land use. Happy to take questions at this time.
Any questions for Adam? Comments? I know in Fargo, we just recently had a bit of controversy around the issue of wildlife or wildflower, wild plants, natural plants, garden on public land. And did you have any idea, or does anybody from the city of Fargo have any idea how much of public land is actually put into pollinator gardens? Anybody know?
I don't have specific numbers. We have an idea of some of the projects that have been happening in the county, both in Cass and Clay County, but as for specific acreage,
No idea. It's just something that seems to me that it would be really wise to encourage or incentivize in some way. Heather.
Thank you, Chair. I know in the city of Moorhead, we have been making an effort to transition some of our city-owned property, and I know Clay County has as well, to alter it to incorporate some pollinator plantings. And it's been a cooperative effort with some of those nonprofits that Adam listed, as well as some youth inspired movements and others have come forward to reduce the amount of machinery, the amount of water, the amount of labor, and a variety of things. The right-of-way is always kept clear, but it's a city belief to change up some of the city-owned property, rather than just having it be turf grass and sit there. And so, you know, we've got a climate emergency that we have claimed for our city. And in moving forward with some of that, as well as our strategic plan, having some of our converted land is part of that plan. And so we have a land map that does show not only plans that we have put into action, but future plans. So citizens can see the land use and what has been transitioned and what will be in the future. Yeah.
So the Cass County Soil Conservation District cost shares what we call pocket prairies, either in the city or out of the city. It doesn't matter. But that program has been increasing every year. I would say we started out with maybe a couple a year, and now we're probably doing 10 to 12. We're also working with the Fargo Parks District and the United Prairie Foundation. The North Fargo softball complex actually is being converted. A lot of it's being converted to native forbs and grasses. So the Fargo Parks District is also very involved in converting a lot to native habitats. So we're starting to make some inroads.
I make along with that, I know that Clay County, along with Clay SWCD, in cooperation, Pheasants Forever, we have areas along Crestwood, along the river, different projects around the county where we can convert areas, speaking to what you're talking about, and they're piece by piece, let's put it that way. We also have, as well as I think Cass does too, urban conservation. So promoting pollinator growth or use in urban areas, as well as rain barrels, excuse me, and other practices. So,
You know, I think it truly is probably a difference in aesthetics, but if anybody has had the opportunity to walk through some of these, I think it's called urban forests along the rivers. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah,
it's an
River
asset.
Creepers. River Keepers does a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big thing is changing the idea of beauty as being mowed short, Kentucky bluegrass, to actually, native habitats. And that's something that Fargo Parks has done a lot of, because 20 years ago it was a mode that was a park, and trying to get the public on board with, it might look a little quote unquote messy, but it definitely is a much healthier ecosystem, because a lawn grass is basically a biological desert, where the pollinators need that native habitat.
It's good for the birds and the animals and everything else as well. Any other comments?
I want to get back to that. Since Jeffrey mentioned the ecosystem, I think it's really important to note that it's individual, but it's something that we can do as municipalities and counties as well. Because as individuals who can get grants from our county soil and water conservation districts, or even the state, I know in Minnesota people can get lawns to legumes grants. But the impact is not only if you've got a vegetable garden and you've got a pollinator plot in your yard as well. Think of the wonderful amounts of garden vegetables you can grow if you've got happy pollinators. But the impact that it will have if we as a city don't spray our parks. We've got a number of very large, beautiful parks in the city of Moorhead, and when we chose not to spray in our parks, I received thank yous from people who were able to forage in those parks and get grape leaves and a number of other things to feed their families. And I think that that's a really important thing to consider, that it may look messy, as Jeffrey had said, but people were able to eat the foods that our native, beautiful things grow that we may consider not as part of our food system because we didn't buy it in a grocery store, but people eat them each and every day in their home. because that's what they grew up eating. And I think that is something that we, as officials, as well as community leaders, can sort of reflect on, and as we move forward and use these resources that the Clay County Food Partners utilize and look to update each and every year, that in conversations that we have, as you said, Chair, that it just recently came up, the opportunity that we have, it doesn't have to be Stopping Spring in all the parks, but those parks that do have opportunities, which ones could it make a difference to have those pollinator plantings or Stopping Spring?
I'm going to ask another question for the Fargo staff. Has Fargo Park District, have they changed their policy? Does the city use pesticides and or even fertilizer / weed killer? Anyone know?
Unless anybody, yeah, go ahead.
Good morning, Eric Egg here. I do know that the Fargo Park District regularly sprays the green lawns with a general herbicide, usually applied early in the spring and on large open green spaces, as well as areas around retention ponds and those water basins. So they are, last year I believe it was an herbicide called Millennium. And it is supposed to be a little bit easier on some of the like milkweed, things of that nature, but it is still a pretty harsh herbicide.
Okay, well, thank you.
And I'll just
Anything
add
else?
that snapshot does include information for the cities and the counties as well as park districts in their area too.
Okay.
So that information, I don't have it in front of me, but that
It's on
information
the
is in there.
website?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, anything else? If not, we'll go on. Asset inventory review. Janice, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to take a few minutes to go back to the asset inventory that, for those of you who are with us in November, remember we were able to break into small groups and have some conversations about the assets that we see in our community using a tool with wealth creation. And so really the point of that for us as a steering committee is we wanted to take the opportunity to do that so we can just kind of have a pool of information of what are our assets in our community and how can we then use those in turn to help grow and move a path forward. So I just have a quick highlights of what those were. So if you'll remember, there were 8 different capitals where we were able to have those conversations around and list those assets. So here we just have 4 of them listed and some of the takeaways when we compiled what the information was from all of the different groups. So within individual, a lot of people were commenting on what great, strong community organizations that we have locally here, really community focused area. We also are growing in our cultural diversity, and then also commenting on the strong educational systems we have throughout our community. That takes us right into intellectual, where that was really the college system and the K through 12 systems throughout the communities was really highlighted among all of the groups as well, and the research that's being done at some of these institutions as well as with some of our local organizations too. Social, there was a lot of feedback, which we all know too, is that Fargo, Moorhead area and beyond is an area that cares about the people who are here. A lot of people willing to step up and help, to volunteer. Social, that level of helping is really, really strong here. We also have a lot of great local food organizations that are really serving their populations well. And then also within this one, kind of a theme throughout was just the diverse population that we've been seeing growing here as well. Cultural, a lot of people connected to the community gardens that we see in the area. Growing Together was mentioned a few times as well. And really those ethnic diversity celebrations are really growing, and a lot of the cities and counties are taking a look at what do we need to do different to be inclusive of all of our neighbors here as our community continues to grow and diversify. Capitals for natural. Obviously, a lot about both the Red River and all the other natural water bodies that we have here in Cass and Clay counties. A couple different groups too commented on the flood buyout properties and what that has meant. Of course, too, we have great farmland in the area and also access to land in our communities. Built a lot of discussion about the bike pedestrian lanes and the trail systems, just a lot of great kind of that natural infrastructure too that we already have. And healthcare was listed from a couple different groups on this as well, of just really great health related research, and that health promotion has really been important for our communities. Political, similar to social, there's that high level of civic engagement from people. People want to be involved in their community. They want to be a part of it. And all the groups also commented on us here in the room, the Cass Clay Food Commission, the work we've done together on the blueprints, on moving forward with some of these food initiatives and having the conversations that we have here from month to month. And then also the work that MetroCog does, and really with both of those, how we are unique entities and that we are working across those political lines. It's not one city and one city. We are here as a multi-jurisdictional unit to be able to kind of work towards solutions together. Financial too, this one honestly had the fewest responses, and I think we kind of ran out of time. There were such great conversations happening, but a lot of people just commenting on the diverse community, diverse economy that we have here, and just that there's a lot of grants, a lot of going back to that kind of civic engagement. People want to help and be connected here. Then there is some support too within that public health, and health promotion did come up in this one as well. So I do have a list of all of the different ones that were put together. If anyone's interested that, I could share that. And we also have access to this as a steering committee to be able to use this and really help us think about how we want to move forward, what directions we want to go, and what assets we do have in our community as different issues come up. Any questions on this?
Questions, comments? Thank you, Janice.
Yes, thank you.
So the next one is an update on the Food Action Network.
Yes, still me.
Janice.
Yes. Thank you. So we, of course, have been having a lot of conversations about what the Action Network looks like now, with Food of the North dissolving and officially being wrapped up for business, so to say, and just having those conversations of what do we want our Action Network to look like. And as a reminder, historically, once we established the Action Network, we started working with Food of the North immediately to help us support that Action Arm network. So with them going away, have quite a gap. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was create a survey and administer that to learn from the community, especially those who are engaged in that First Fridays network already, to see kind of what they would like to see out of an Action Network moving forward, and what they like about the current Action Network as well. And so we did administer the survey through our listserv, through Food of the North listserv, and we advertised it at least a couple First Fridays events as well. We ended up with 31 responses overall. These are just a couple of the highlights from the kind of who took the survey, the demographics of the survey. You can see 50% were attending these as community members. So the other options were either you were related to some sort of public organization or directly involved with a food organization. But most people who were attending these events were really just there as a community member interested in these topics. 84% of the people who did take it had attended in the past year, attended at least one of the First Fridays events. So I'm really well versed in what those events have looked like. And then you can see there's kind of two related ones there. We did ask about employment status. And so 61% of those who took it did say that they were currently employed, whether that be full-time or part-time, and 32% were retired. So just to give you a little bit of the demographics of who it ended up being taking the survey. And then I just have a few highlights from the survey as well. So what did you like best about attending First Fridays? When I look at this, the first thing I think is people really like the events. It offers a lot to people. People are getting a lot of things out of it, and people could select more than one in this, so you won't see these adding up. But people really just love to be able to hear from local organizations, to learn about these different issues, connect with other people in the community. The other thing that stands out to me on here is the last one there of getting energized to take action and make change is the lowest, and it's 45%. And really that was the exact reason why the Action Network was set up. So for me, I feel like there was a little bit of a gap that had been kind of had occurred with what the Action Network was doing versus how we had intended the Action Network to function. So I think that's just a really good learning for us in figuring out what the Action Network looks like, is really trying to make sure that we are creating a space or event series that really does lean into that, wanting people to be there to be able to learn things that they can then take back and make action from as well. We also asked about how frequently people would want to come. We don't want to oversaturate. We don't want to give people what they need. Monthly and quarterly really did stand out. So I think that that'll be definitely something we use to consider whichever cadence we decide to go to. I think we'll be confident and well addressing our audience well with whether it's quarterly or monthly that we end up with. What area would you travel to? People could also, again, do more than one here. I didn't look to see where people lived versus where they said for this one. So you can see it's pretty split. I think people would really also be able to travel anywhere. So the anywhere in the metro, when we put that in there, was really intended to be one of the core cities, but there was somebody who commented that really maybe anywhere within the counties even, that they might be willing to travel to more of those rural areas or really be able to go outside to incorporate our whole county, 2-county metro here versus just the communities here. And then we did have somebody who would prefer virtual meetings too, and to be able to host these things online as well. We did also ask about formats. As you can see, people are supportive of whichever platform it ends up being. But the panel, I think panel and open conversation really lend itself well to how First Fridays had gone too. I think people really appreciated that those were kind of a two-pronged approach where they could have the learning time, people could share their expertise, but then there was also that ability to ask questions, to engage and have that conversation. So when I look at that, I just think that that was kind of what people, again, pointing back to what people really liked about First Fridays. So with that, so next steps with the Action Network, the steering committee is really taking in all of these results and trying to figure out what this means for us moving forward. Michelle and I have also had the opportunity to connect with some people who are interested in being part of an Action Network moving forward. We saw too within the community, a lot of people were saddened by the closing of Food of the North, and so people wanting to continue this on or in some fashion, not necessarily First Fridays again, but want to be involved in an Action Network moving forward to make sure that there is still opportunities like First Fridays within our community. So we'll be designing through with this new format. One thing that we did want to do too, to allow us to be able to take the time and really connect with community and be thoughtful in designing what the Action Network moves forward, is that we did want to plan a winter event to be able to still have some level of engagement with people without saying this is what we're doing next and rushing into something that may not be the best fit in our community. So I also want to take the opportunity to invite everyone to our bingo night, which is tomorrow night. It's going to be food systems bingo. It's kind of a combination of trivia and bingo. We'll be sharing information about things related to local food policy, related to our council here and the work that we've done, trying to provide that educational piece while giving people the opportunity to have a more social and relaxed environment as well. So that'll be tomorrow evening, Thursday, January 11th. 6 o'clock, the doors will kind of open, so to say. The event will start, or the bingo will start at 6:30, but we'll be there from 6 to 6:30. We'll have some light appetizers and food, and then be able to just network and connect beforehand. And then we'll play a few rounds of bingo. We will have gift cards available as prizes. I think we're doing 5 rounds of bingo, and then we'll be able to socialize afterwards as well. So we hope to be able to see you tomorrow night. Yes, any questions?
Thank you, Janice. Front Street Tap Room, 21 and older?
I think anyone can come in, Michelle. Family friendly, yes.
It is family friendly. Marvelous, thank you.
Question. I don't know if you can provide further clarification. Thank you, Janice, for summarizing. I've been curious about the results from that survey. On the one screen said that 61% of the people liked the format of the next slide. They preferred, I mean, they liked the panel, but then only 3% liked the current structure, but that's kind of the current structure. So 3% is surprisingly low, I think, for liking the panel.
Yes, that's a good question. So actually within this, I like the current structure wasn't an option that we provided to people. There was an other option and they inserted that. And I thought that was just an important one to include as its own standalone, but that wasn't an option to the full group if they
Okay.
didn't want to make it an option.
Okay,
So,
that makes
yes,
more sense
yes.
to me. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I have to say, I certainly appreciate the enthusiasm and the engagement that the community does come forward with. And this Action Network, I think, could be a real important part of trying to accomplish the mission that we're setting out to do. And again, this more recent instance, it was because of the response that we got from, I personally probably heard from 30 to 40 people about the pollinator or the natural landscape garden. And that's what influenced the ultimate decision. So this network is an important one, and trying to figure out how to get it more engaged, I think is a real wise move. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I would just comment that, I would just comment that as far as getting engaged, I think that was at 45%. But many of the panels, at least the ones that I attended, there wasn't a specific call to action. There wasn't a time at the beginning or the end of the gathering of First Fridays. So I think if we move forward with something similar, seeming to they like the educational part, they like the panel, I think structurally that there could be a more specific call to action, and there's a variety of ways that could look like that. I think we could improve that percentage of 45% a little bit. So
That's a great springboard, Joan. I echo some of that call to action, and I think that there were elements sprinkled in with the panels and the open conversation. Those open conversations often were catalysts for other things, or the announcements at the beginning for events, again, being that sort of catalyst. But it wasn't a direct call like, Joan, you should do this. It wasn't as explicit as perhaps it could be, but seeing that data, that 45%, that it wasn't as explicit as it could be, gives us a great opportunity, that sort of molding, that forming that could be there. But I myself often found an opportunity to be like, I could do something there. I didn't often make it to First Fridays because of my schedule with work, but when I was there, I was like, oop, taking notes, going to that event, or donating to this, or I could introduce that person to this person. Who knows what could happen? And so I definitely see opportunities moving forward, and I'm really excited because I too, Janice, heard lots of sadness about the disillusion of Food of the North. And now we have just an outstanding opportunity in 2024 to make a new Action Network leg of our collaboration and commission group. So I look forward to being part of whatever magic we make.
One other comment, and then we can move on. But I do think, in regards to the call for action, rolling in these resources, these snapshots, whatever you're calling those things, there's a lot of information, a lot of good action to be taken from those, and rolling those into whatever presentations or education is being done would certainly help to move things to the next level, to the next step. So that's another thing to think about. Okay, on to civic engagement, and are talking about civic engagement. Noel.
All
All right, good morning, everyone, and happy 2024. I think this presentation fits in perfectly with what we've been talking about throughout the morning. So I'm really excited to continue to build on the topics that have already come up. So the purpose of this presentation is, number one, for me to report some of the findings that I had. I had an amazing opportunity this summer through my employer, the University of Minnesota Extension, to not only take some time away from my regular duties to take a professional development leave, but they also sponsored my travel in being able to go to some other places, look at some other food policy councils, and bring that information back to Minnesota. So here is a step towards that today that I hope will plant some seeds of ideas that will inspire us as we think about the future of our work together, and especially what our action network is going to look like. I also really love this concept, something that I learned about on leave when I got to actually meet the author of a book called Active Hope: How to Face the Mess We're In with Unexpected Resilience and Creative Power. And I really like this concept of active hope represented in the artwork that you see on the screen. For those of us who work on the food system, it can often feel really big and really overwhelming. I'm thinking about a recent presentation where I learned that the number of visits to food shelves across Minnesota has doubled in 2 years. That is a shocking statistic, and I think we see challenges like that throughout our food system with climate change, with pollinator habitat loss, with any number of issues in the supply chain that we experienced during the pandemic. And so I think I love this concept of active hope because it acknowledges those challenges, it acknowledges and honors our pain around those issues, but it also offers a framework for us to move into a sense of not just naive, unbounded hope, but hope that's tied towards taking action to address these challenges. So you'll see sort of a theme around active hope in this presentation, and we'll hopefully have some time to come back to that at the end. So why did the university send me out on this adventure? This model that you're seeing on the screen represents our model in the Department of Family, Health, and Well-Being for how we do our work. It's a model that recognizes that health is not merely the absence of disease. It recognizes that food is not merely the combination of nutrients that go into specific food types, but rather our food system, our health systems are bound up in issues related to the science, but also related to culture, also related to history, also related to what's happening in the community, what's happening with policy, with seeing individuals not as empty vessels who need to be educated, but as powerful actors that need to have the opportunities to shape what our systems look like and how they engage in those systems. So this is big. These shifts represent some pretty monumental changes in academia as a whole, in the field of health and nutrition more specifically, and this requires professionals to rethink how we're operating as well. So I thought of myself during this 4-month experience as both a bee and a butterfly. Shout out to pollinators again. But the bee is kind of the act of, stepping away, stepping outside of my regular duties, getting to go to some other places, getting to be a cross-pollinator as I'm going from place to place, returning home, to think about what can we learn from each other? What new blooms can we cultivate on our landscape, if you will? This also was a process of being a butterfly, of taking a step back from my day-to-day emails, Zoom meetings, etc., and getting to think a little bit about the big picture. digging into concepts like food policy councils and networks, but also things like how do we change funding systems? How do we change grant making? How do we change the budgeting process within local government or within an organization? So I'll come back to that. But what this also looked like was June through September of 2023. So on this very cold day heading into the deep freeze, we're going to see a lot of pictures of outside, of nature, of summertime. So if nothing else, I hope you enjoy that. I did a number of events that I attended, people I sat down with, sometime for an entire day to learn about their work, and a number of site visits, mostly to community food systems and other community-based projects. This took place in Maine, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Scotland, and England, just to give you kind of a geographic picture. Food policy councils were not my only focus during this adventure, but I did get to connect with a few of them that are listed on the screen: the Just Foods Collaborative in North Carolina, Roanoke Food Shed Network, Greater Franklin Food Council, Cumberland County Food Council, and the Maine network of food councils. So the bottom three are all councils that are in Maine. So getting into the big picture ideas, the first concept that I'd like to share is around the idea of a food policy council and a network serving these purposes of both bridging and creating a sense of belonging. So in our network, I think we've done a pretty good job with bridging, evidenced by the fact that we're all in this room together right now. We are bringing together the key stakeholders in our food system. We are connecting with elected officials and other folks who are working for local government. And I think that we've actually done a pretty great job of this if you also look at things like the Hunger Coalition that we have in the community, like the First Fridays events and the many types of people that participated in those. However, I think we have some work that we can do around really reaping the rewards of those connections. So thinking about what comes out of our relationships with one another. How are we viewing our role in this network as one based in reciprocity, where there are things that we gain from being a part of this, learning about our food system, maybe having ideas to bring back to a city council or an organization, but also what are we each contributing to this work? How do we see it as our jobs to take what we learn in these spaces, what we learn from connecting with one another, and carry that forward into the community? I also think that the work that is really before us with the Action Network is creating a stronger sense of belonging within our food system, within this particular group, thinking about the fact that there's not a single person in the world who does not have a personal connection to food, who does not have stories that they carry about food, who does not have a stake in what's happening here in our food system. So recognizing that we really need to be able to involve all of those voices. And we need to be able to break out of this idea of being reliant on experts who have a degree or who hold maybe positional power. And think about everyone as an expert in their own food story. And then the last question is, how do we support an action network to that point that is welcoming and accessible to all people in our community? And I just want to make a quick note here that that doesn't mean that we're going to, fill the room in this space, or that we're going to have 20 people speaking to the Moorhead City Council about food systems. I think that these are very specific kinds of spaces that are never going to have broad appeal. It's probably a fraction of a % of people who are willing to go speak at a public meeting, even about something that they really care about. So that lack of willingness to show up does not mean that they don't care. So I think it's on us to think creatively about where are these other spaces where civic engagement can happen outside of what is, a pretty formal space, almost as formal as you can get when it comes to a gathering point in the community.
And slightly intimidating sometimes.
Slightly, yeah, I'd say really intimidating. I mean, I love public speaking, and I am never more intimidated speaking in public than I am in front of my own city council. So think about that. So this is right from Captain Obvious. If we want to engage more people in connecting with us, in connecting with the work, we need to make it fun. A great example of this was, a couple of things I never thought I'd see in a sentence together: local food plan and party. But this group, the Greater Franklin Food Council, did this really, really well. First of all, let's talk about what their action plan actually looks like. You can see it up on the screen to the right. It is 5 pages. That's it. It is 4 overall strategies, each with a handy-dandy color-coded icon. And then 1 additional page for each of those overarching approaches, color-coded, visually appealing, and something that is really digestible for people. So I think, this is something that they can display at any event. This is something where their strategies, which we're not really going to talk about, were really specific, really accessible. People could come to one of their events, read through the action plan, have a quick conversation with someone from the Food Council, and have a strong sense of how they could connect to the work. They also held this out in the food system at an orchard. There was cider. There was wood-fired pizza with locally grown ingredients. There was even a double rainbow. I don't know how they timed that to happen during the party. Amazing. But really kind of bringing the work out to the people. And also, let's get out of these stuffy meeting rooms and get out into the food system together. So another piece around belonging and bridging was to think about leaning into the history and the variety of ways that people want to engage in the food system. This was a whole weekend of festivities where I got this cool free t-shirt that I have on today. And this was oriented around a community in North Carolina that is the oldest community in the country established by freed, formerly enslaved people. So an incredible history that unfortunately has gotten very whitewashed and diminished over time. So a few years ago, they started having this event, Princeville Homecoming, to really lift up this rich history and bring the community together for some fun celebrations. So what was new about this event this year is that the local Food Policy Council created a number of events as a part of this umbrella of Princeville Homecoming. So they hosted the first ever Eastern North Carolina Black Farmer Conference, where they brought in a local historian to talk about the incredible history of food in that area, the incredible history of enslaved farmers being targeted to be brought to this country specifically for the knowledge and skills that they possessed around food production. So what you might hear there is a little bit of a flipping of a narrative that's been presented in recent times about the history of slavery. They hosted a Black Farm tour where we got to go and meet people like the, Julius Tillery on the screen here, who started a family business called Black Cotton to really think about the histories of cotton and again, kind of flipping the narrative on who produces cotton and what it means to the Black community. A farm-to-table dinner that featured music, a documentary about the history of Princeville, and a couple of other events as well. So it was incredible to participate in this weekend of festivities. And I tell you, I think I was the only person who attended every single event. Even the organizers, they split it up and were dividing and conquering. And so it was really cool to see that, like, not every person has to be involved in every event, right? But we can really think about having a variety of offerings that meet people where they're at in a multitude of ways. And that can create some really powerful feelings of belonging and bridging that can happen between people. So, second big idea, and we've talked about this quite a bit today, so I'm going to go through this one a little bit quicker. But this is, again, kind of also like the Princeville Homecoming. How are we telling our community food stories? How visible are they in the community? What is our community aesthetic? Commissioner Preston brought this up earlier. How do we change norms that we have around the idea of the American lawn being this ubiquitous phenomenon that we automatically are bought into without even thinking about how else those spaces could be used? And then lastly, how do our community spaces foster connections to people, to food, nature, and art? I will say, I think that we're doing this pretty well. We even saw like the Plains Art Museum example, but I came across some really fun community garden examples. These are from Roanoke, Virginia on the left, and Scotland on the right, Irvine, Scotland. And both of these community gardens really went above and beyond as far as making their space visually appealing, creative, inviting, not just for folks to come and grow food in rows, but to think about spending time there, sitting by this little pond with flowers that they had created, admiring murals and different design aspects. The garden on the left actually was doing a new event this year to think about a garden gala, where they invite their gardeners to come, dress up fancy, have hors d'oeuvres, beverages, and stand by their plot and talk about their garden plot as if it were a work of art that they created. So this idea of food production as art and thinking about those intersections, I think is something that we're on a path toward already and we could take even further. We talked about this quite a bit, but the idea of pollinator habitat as beautification and placemaking. Another example on the right there of a bee hotel, some signage that really talks about why we have pollinators. And then on the left is an image. This is actually a parking lot, and you can hardly even see the store in the background because they have so many things growing. They took every single inch of space, of green space that they had around their parking lot, within their parking lot, and converted it all into pollinator habitat. And the result was absolutely stunning. Okay, so we're gonna take a hard left here and go from talking about art and beauty to talking about money. So this concept of democratizing our dollars is one I have been working with for years. And I see really taking off at this point in time with funders, with state and local government. But basically this idea is, how do we involve more people in decisions about money? How can grant making and budgets be more inclusive and participatory? And in what other ways can we create opportunities to practice the skill of democracy outside of a public meeting, outside of voting every 2 or 4 years? And so this example is a community center in Scotland in a very disenfranchised community that over 30 years had destroyed its own reputation through fiscal mismanagement, through not being connected with the community. And over the last 5 or 6 years, they have completely turned this around by doing an event, a process every year where they take a pot of funds that they have to support their community center. They invite folks from the community to apply for the funding, and then they invite the community to come together, and they get hundreds of people who attend to vote, to first of all go around, talk with the different applicants, and then vote on which projects are going to be funded. And I don't have a lot of time left to get into some of the amazing impacts, but one example that's on the screen is a green space covered in garbage. A project was funded through this voting process to clean it up. Even the director of the center was really worried that they would do all this work and it would be a mess again 6 months later. Well, that has not happened. The community has taken ownership of this space, and he attributes that process of actually voting to give them the funds as an essential reason why they have taken that on, that sense of ownership. Participatory budgeting in Scotland is a huge deal. This is why I went to Scotland. They have a mandate in Scotland, or a target, I should say, for 1% of all public dollars to be allocated through participatory budgeting. And they have hit that target. They have millions of dollars in Northeast Scotland being allocated for a just transition in climate change. They have projects supporting community gardens, supporting food shelves. It's really happening across the country in a number of different ways. And I think it's really exciting to also see the same process being used in the US as well. Okay, last one. This is the idea of voting and getting out in the community, getting outside. And this was a public art festival in North Carolina. So in case you wanted a handy mnemonic device to remember the presentation, we talked about A, active hope, B, bridging and belonging, C, cultivating community creativity, D, democratizing our dollars. And our going forth stage is the call to action. So I invite you to reflect on, where do you feel hope and joy in our local food system? What are you seeing with new eyes? Maybe as a result of this presentation or the other things that we've talked about today. And then lastly, what is one step that you could take in 2024 to help our community thrive? And might I suggest, if there's something in this presentation that intrigued you, talk with me. If you have ideas for our Action Network, talk with Michelle and Janice or anyone on the steering committee. We are really excited to get to continue building our network and relationship with all of you, and to think about what we can do to dream big and take action in 2024. I don't know that I have much. Could we take a couple questions or comments?
This is great. How long were you gone?
I was traveling for about 5 or 6 weeks of the 4-month period. So I had time to come home and journal and plan my next trip, and also spend some time, doing literature reviews and things like that.
Ms. Harden, I appreciate your enthusiasm and excitement and fantastic things you saw there. Is there anything that you could identify as a baby step in advancing one of those ideas? I mean, they're all fantastic ideas, or short-term ideas, short-term goals, something you've thought about and maybe need a little push to get you over going into it? Or, I mean, I don't know.
I think we have a lot of opportunities. One thing we've been talking about is, we have some real movers and shakers and food champions in our community. So rather than thinking about like the Action Network as yet another meeting or another space that we, please come join our thing over here, how could we think about the Action Network as a way to empower the champions who are already taking action, help them make deeper connections across the community with policy work that could be happening? So I think, we talk about whose table do we go to? Do they come to our table? Do we go to their table? I sometimes like to think of it as like, let's just get rid of the table already and like come together as people who have dreams and hopes and ideas. And, you know, maybe if we had some conversations with our champions, with our, commissioners about that, I think that that could produce maybe some pretty interesting insights if we kind of, again, it's like the butterfly pulling back from the day to day and, oh, what's going to be our next policy blueprint, and thinking about our own kind of personal transformation and transformation of our network and how we're connecting with each other and starting there. So I don't know if that was concrete enough, but I can assure you I've got some other ideas as well. We've talked about participatory budgeting and what could that look like if we took some of our stipend from being a part of the community practice and sort of re-granted it out. What if it was something that we raised money for, maybe even within one of our jurisdictions, to think about how could we do this sort of flipped grant-making process that really centers the voices of communities?
I appreciate that. I think I'd spoken to you at the last First Friday, and you were talking about participatory budgeting in Scotland. Did you allude to that some places in the States are doing it, or is that more a European?
Oh, it's very big in the U.S. And in fact, I've led about a dozen participatory grant making or participatory budgeting events just through my work in extension. So most recently, I helped Crow Wing County, Minnesota, allocate $200,000 of their opioid settlement funds through a process where they basically brought together their community-based coalition with people with lived experience around that issue, with the 17 grantees, and they all came forward. The grantees gave a pitch about their project, answered questions from the community, and then those coalition members voted on which projects would be funded. So this is a real thing happening right now. It's going to continue to happen. I've worked with the North Dakota Department of Health around this topic throughout Minnesota. The Michigan Good Food Fund, I facilitated a shared gifting circle for them a few years ago. So this is very real work, and I think something that, you know, we should be paying attention to as a network, but also as local decision makers and leaders within our own organizations. So unless there are any other burning questions, I will say I can stick around today. I will be at bingo tomorrow night as well. So if you'd like to continue the conversation, let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Super interesting. Michelle, steering committee update.
Good morning. Our steering committee, we do continue to meet monthly. And as you've heard about throughout the meeting this morning, we still are having conversations about the Action Network and that arm of our Cass Clay Food Partner structure. I don't need to rehash the dissolution of First Fridays and Food of the North, but please know that we are open to feedback and are continuing those conversations. And I was going to invite you to bingo, but I think that's been done enough. But again, if you're able to join us, it will be a good time, even if it's for a few minutes or the entirety of the event. That would be great. So additionally, in 2024, the steering committee plans to more actively engage with food commissioners and at-large members in an effort to strengthen our connections and even increase the confidence within the commissioners and at-large members. But we really want to have more engagement, to meet with you, to have those conversations. And so intentionally here in January and February, our steering committee meetings are going to be held in the Sky Commons conference room, or the former Fargo City Commission chambers. So really want to create a space that is open and inviting, and invite all of you to join us at those meetings if you're able in February or January or both. And they are held the fourth Mondays of the month from 1 to 2:30 p.m. So that would be January 22nd and February 26th. Again, really hoping to connect at a more engaged level to where we can really work together moving forward here in 2024. And we've heard about the social belonging and reaping the benefits and those things, so I think that really is a way to tie that together. And that is all that I have for steering committee updates.
And then you're on for kudos and community recognition, I guess.
I am, yes. So, talking about the generosity of our community, the asset inventory especially highlighted how generous of a community that we are fortunate to be a part of. It is exponentially apparent during the holidays. If we even think back a few months about food drives, adopt a family, stuff the bus, giving trees, bell ringers, all of those things that we were able to experience, definitely realize that we are part of a generous and giving community. All of those things that I mentioned, of course, was not a comprehensive list, but also weren't all food specific. Providing support and relief to members of community, to our community in any capacity, really does make an impact on lives. And so we have talked about the social determinants of health as an excellent reminder of the interconnectedness of the factors that support the ability to really, for our community to really thrive. So with that, with the kudos and recognition, the steering committee really wants to recognize a local event that speaks to that generosity. And this is an event that this last year in 2023 did break a record, and that is the Fill the Dome event, if you're all familiar. So more than 50 area elementary, middle, and high schools participated in the Fill the Dome event back in November of 2023. And with the help of the Metro Area Student Ambassadors, area students raised more than $30,000, and they collected more than 100,000 pounds of food and other necessities for those in need of our community, which is really an extravagant feat, but also something that should be lifted up. And so with that, we do have a Metro Area Student Ambassador with us, McKenna Peterson, who I would love to invite to come up and share her experience with you all.
Hi everyone, my name is McKenna Peterson. I'm a freshman at Minnesota State University Moorhead, and I'm also the advisor of Metro Area Student Ambassadors, also known as MESA. So Fill the Dome, we are the world's largest student-led food drive. Fill the Dome has been around since 2007, and our group has collected more than 2.5 million pounds of food and more than $740,000. Our group is supported by the Great Plains Food Bank, Hornbachers, Fargo Dome, and Dakota Medical Foundation. Our group consists of 12 high schools and all the middle schools and elementary schools that feed into them. Every year we have meetings, so we start in August. We meet 3 to 4 times every month to plan everything that goes into it, whether that's sponsors, the day of, events that we put on, everything like that. And we choose a theme for the year. This past year was Washing Away Hunger. So as we see all of, if you saw in the form, we had a lot of pictures of different designs. So they take the design and they make like waves and sand, and it was amazing to see all the different types of designs, turtles, fish, all of that fun stuff. It's a great way to keep everyone involved and excited for Fill the Dome, having a fun event that especially for the littles that come in, they enjoy, like, oh, we're going to make a turtle with the food that we bring in. That's so awesome. So that's one of our main things that we love to do for them. The past few years, Fill the Dome totals have really been down. With that being said, there was 80,000 pounds and $5,600 in 2021, and 83,000 pounds and $25,000 in 2022. MASA really wanted to step up the game this year and make their goals go above and beyond that. This year, the students brought in over 100,000 pounds of food and over $39,000. When we take these two amounts and put them together, that means that there was 161,000 meals provided from the Fill the Dome event. This is the most pounds of food since 2019 and the most monetary donations since 2017. We often get asked how our money is used. The answer is we get to pick. This year, the students wanted to give back to the schools as much as possible, so we decided to do the backpack program. and then giving food to food pantries, buying food and putting them into the food pantries in schools directly. And then we also did perishable food items. Since we do non-perishable food items, we wanted to get some perishable food items for the Great Plains Food Bank as well. You can contact us by our website, which is fillthedome.org. We also have an email and a lot of social medias. With that, does anyone have any questions?
Impressive.
Thank you. Yes, it's truly, it's great. I remember being in kindergarten and be like, oh my gosh, Mom, I have to bring some cans to fill the dome. And then my junior year of high school, I got asked to be on Metro Area Student Ambassadors, and now I just took over this year as a first-year advisor. So it's amazing to see all the different steps of it, and from being excited to seeing all the backhand things that go into it.
Comments? Questions?
You just make us all feel good as a community, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, then we are to the public comment period. Is there anyone online or in the audience that would like to address the Food Commission? Okay, doesn't look like it. So anything any of the commission members want to bring to the table and make us all aware of what's going on? Updates or announcements? Yeah, Heather.
Thank you, Chair. At the Solid Waste Advisory Committee for Clay County, we recently had a topic of conversation regarding plastic bags. And I know for our Cass Clay food partners, we have some resources regarding single-use items that was, I believe, put out in 2019. And we've been doing a review every time we meet. And the Cass Clay food partners and our commission was actually brought up at SWAC is the term that we use for the Solid Waste Advisory Group. And I really was glad to hear that the resources were brought up and people thought of the commission and sort of looking at those resources and what we could utilize and bring up as we're looking at that plastic bag task force that was utilized a number of years ago, because there's a lot of concern about the number of plastic bags in our communities that go into our waste facilities, as well as blow around, and the waste that comes with to-go food containers, and they're all part of our food systems. But when we look at the food system, and I really appreciated the visual that we had today in one of the presentations, that it goes all the way to disposal. And I know that many of us who look and consider that, even the resource that we have on composting, we have a municipal composting resource and a residential composting resource. I think those are great resources that we need to look at as well. And I plan on bringing those up in the Solid Waste Advisory Group as well, because in those sort of realms that we work in, not only in the Cass Clay Food Partners, but on committees and commissions, it's the activities that we do as individuals that impact our food system as a whole, with the waste that we choose not to utilize, the straws, the forks, the styrofoam containers. And so I think looking forward to the resources that we review maybe next month, perhaps we can do that, because I know we in Clay County are taking a look at some of those resources, and any collaborative efforts that we can do between our groups would be very much appreciative. So again, thank you for having them, and we look forward to utilizing them.
Any other comments, updates, announcements?
I kind of have a comment. I'm going to combine two things here together. In a few days, we're going to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. So it's very it's very interesting how someone can work so hard at civil rights and whatever, he's accomplished a lot in his shortened life. So we want to make sure we do remember the Martin Luther King Day coming up. But he had a comment that I've kind of used in a little different way. He said, we all have probably came on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. We're all here are actually working for the same goal. We're in the same boat now. So I do appreciate everything you guys have done. I wish could have done more. I'm still kind of new at this, but I do appreciate all the work, the steering committee, and we represent different communities here, different entities, different backgrounds. So it's kind of neat how you can combine the pool of knowledge to help out. People that are struggling, people that are new, people that are having all kinds of difficulties. So I do appreciate all of your work, and I'm going to try to be more involved.
It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Well, I so enjoy this group. The turnout is always really good. So thank you for coming to the meetings and participating like you do. So, and just, I guess, announcements at the very end being bingo, which we've already talked about. Next coffee with the commission is to be determined. And then our meeting schedule is attached. So please get that on your calendar, which I need to do yet. And then our next meeting is actually March 13th. So,
Did you want to do public comment?
I'm sorry?
Is there any public comment?
I called for some, but
okay, I missed it then.
there was none that I
Okay,
could see. So
thank you.
thank you though, Paul. All right, so we are adjourned. Thank you for coming.